Hey there everybody! Today, we're going to write some Ansible plays and playbooks to learn about some more core skills for the RHCE. We can start out with the typical Hello World stuff, and then move into writing a playbook that deploys a simple web server. Now, I know that the web server thing is pretty cliche, but I also find it to be a great initial example, so that's why I'm going with it. However, just to make things a little more interesting, what we'll do is utilize some host-level variables to allow us to run the same play in sort of a dynamic way, where it'll install Nginx on one machine and HTTPD on another machine. And of course, this is just my plan right now. There's nothing super official about this, and that's because writing playbooks is quite an open-ended thing. There's a lot that can go wrong. So I expect to run into a couple of roadblocks during this demo, and if that happens, I hope that it just makes for a better learning experience for all of us. That's the goal here. Anyways, that'll be enough introduction. Let's get right into this. So here I am, once again, on the controller node, and as usual with these videos, what we'll do to get started is just make a new project directory. So I'll just make dir project 3 and cd into there. There we go. And as I often like to do for each of these projects, is practice writing an inventory and ansible.cfg file. And this is just so that we can get those steps burned into our head. So I'll just vim an inventory.ini real quick. And in here, I'm going to create a hosts group called web. And inside of this group, I'm going to add appserver2.labnet and appserver4.labnet to this group. And there's no particular reason why I chose these machines, they just happen to be turned on in my lab right now. Okay, next I'm going to set some host level variables, so you just do that by putting a space after the inventory hostname. And here I'm just going to name some variables for the web server package. So I'll just call that web_package, and I'll set it equal to nginx for appserver2, and I'll set web_package to httpd for appserver4. But we're not done yet. What I think will also be beneficial for us later on is to set another variable that I'll call web_docroot, and I'll set this equal to the document root, the default document root, for these respective web server applications. So for Nginx, that's going to be user share nginx html, and for httpd, that's going to be web_docroot equals /var www html, just like that. And there we go, that looks pretty good. You can see that the syntax highlighting kind of went a little bit wonky there, but it should be fine. We can go ahead and just save and quit and make sure of that by running an ansible-inventory command --list -yaml and then passing our inventory.ini. And there we go, you can see that it picked up the variables just fine. Now, I haven't shown this command in the inventory video, so I apologize for that. This is something that I learned relatively recently, but at least I'm showing it now, right? This is all just a learning process as always. So anyways, what we'll do next is just write an ansible.cfg file, and in here, it's typical for us to use the defaults group to name some defaults, so that'll be the inventory key that we always love to use, and that'll point to my /inventory.ini file, if I can spell that right, inventory.ini, there we go. Next will be the remote_user, and this is a good practice to always set it to something, so it's going to be admin in my case. Next will be the ask_pass key, pass, there we go. And I'm setting that to true, and I'm also going to set host_key_checking to false. And the reason behind these last two keys is because I have not set up public key authentication yet. It's only password authentication, so I want to make sure that all goes smoothly for now. But don't worry, in the next video we're taking care of that. Okay, next we'll make a new group called privilege_escalation. Hopefully I spelled that right. We'll check in just a moment. And I'll create a key here called become_ask_pass and set that equal to true. So this is going to prompt us for the sudoers password all the time, but it's only going to use it when it needs to use it. but it'll prompt us all the time. You'll see that in just a moment. It can be a little bit annoying, but there we go. What we'll do now is just save this file, and I'm gonna test this out by just running a quick ad hoc command. So I'll do an Ansible web, that's the group, -m ping, and we'll see if this ping runs. So I'll type in my SSH password, that looks good. Become password, we can just hit enter, and there we go. We got all greens. Fantastic. All right, what we can do now, since we know that everything is working as it should, is we can write a simple YAML file that'll be our first playbook. So I'll create a hello.yml. There we go. And in a YAML file, what is a good idea to do is put 3 dashes at the top to indicate that it's a YAML file. And another optional practice that I've heard about is that you should put 3 dots at the bottom to indicate the end of the YAML file. However, you almost see nobody ever do this, the 3 dots at the bottom. So I'm not really going to do that either. It just saves time to, not type in 3 dots. So anyways, what we'll do now is just think about this. So a Ansible playbook contains a list of plays. So what we're going to want to do is use a list item with a dash and a space and start specifying some properties for this item in the list. So that's how YAML works. You have a list item with a dash and a space, just like that. And so one of the properties that we can give here is a name for this play. So I'll just call this the hello play. And after that, we'll give some other properties here, like the hosts keyword, and we'll point this to the web group. After that, we can set something else like become to false. That's a Boolean. And I guess that's enough there. So what we can do now is use the tasks keyword and start naming some tasks. And tasks also takes a list. So we'll use a dash and a space and then give a name to a task. So I'll just call this task say hello. And we'll use the debug module, which is of course used for debugging and printing variables and things like that. And we'll use the message option in the debug module to print a string. So this string is going to say, hello, I am, and then I'm going to use a variable. I'll explain that in just a moment. But I'm going to use a variable here that says inventory underscore hostname, and my web package is web package. Just like that. So the variable thing is pretty self-explanatory. You inset it using double curly braces, just like I showed you here. I'll show you another quirk about this in just a moment. So one more thing is that you can give a task without a name. You don't have to put a name here. The name is optional for a lot of stuff. So I could just say debug and then give another message. And here's something interesting that I want to show you. If you want to give a variable directly to this message option, it's not going to work like this unless you put quotes in it. So unless you put it in quotes. So let me demonstrate. So I'll just say something like Ansible underscore user or something like that. That's another special variable like inventory hostname that gets filled in by Ansible. And so this is not going to work unless I put this in quotes. And the reason why you would need to do this is because there's a shorthand version of naming a dictionary or writing a dictionary in YAML that uses the curly braces, and so the YAML parser is going to get confused if we have double curly braces right at the beginning after a colon space, basically. So I hope that cleared that up. We don't want any ambiguity in our playbooks, so there you go. And speaking of it being a playbook, we only have one play in here, but we can make it more playbooky by having another play. So I could do something like name, and I'll give it a name. I actually want to make a new space here. Name, and I'll call this hello from local controller. And you can see where this is going. I'm going to set hosts to localhost, if I can spell that right, host. And I'm going to set become to false. Not that we need it, it's like a default is false. And then some tasks. I'll just make it say, what's up? Something like that. And then over here, I'll just use the debug module again. Debug message what's up, I am inventory hostname. You can tell that I'm having a bit of fun with this. Anyways, so we'll just save this, and what we can do now is just run an Ansible playbook syntax check to check the syntax and see if it's all good. So there we go, it didn't blow up in our face. That's always nice to see. And next, what we'll do is just run this playbook and see what happens. So I'll just run it. It's asking for the SSH password, the become password, we can just hit enter. And there we go, the hello play. Let's see how it plays out. If I move up here a little bit, you can see it says our message and it works just fine. And even our web package variable is getting used here. So it means that we did all of that right as well in our inventory. And down here, this second play from the local controller, it says, what's up, I'm localhost. So everything worked as expected. That's always nice to see. All right. So what we'll do now, since we already got the basics covered, is write a more complicated playbook that we'll call web server. And it's pretty self-explanatory what this is going to do. But yeah, we're going to just give it a name called provision a web server. And we'll set the hosts to web, that's the web group. Next, we'll set become to true this time, because we're going to be doing some privilege actions. And after that, we'll set some tasks. So in here, the tasks, it takes a list, and we'll just give this one a name, and it'll be ensure HTTP, or actually web server package is installed. I almost said HTTPD there, but you know, this is a agnostic playbook. It's going to work for Nginx and HTTPD. All right, and you might have noticed this naming convention that I'm going by here. I'm saying ensure web package is installed instead of saying install web server package. And so the reason why I'm using that kind of perspective is because Ansible is idempotent, or it's supposed to be when you write playbooks with it. So that means that we're defining a state here. It's a declarative type of thing. So with that being the case, it's appropriate to name things also in that declarative sort of perspective, I guess. Of course, you can name it whatever you want. I'm not going to judge you. Sometimes I name it like completely nonsensical things as well, and it works just fine. So anyways, whatever makes sense to you, just go for it. It's all good. What I'm going to do here is use the yum module. And the yum module takes a name for a package, and I'll give the web underscore package here. And you can see how I'm doing it in quotes like that. And after that, I'm going to give a state, call that present. So there you go. That's what I'm saying when I'm talking about idempotency. We're defining a state, basically. And so that state's going to be met when we run the playbook. Okie dokie. Next, I'm going to give another task here. And you know, usually when you're setting up a web server, you install your packages, you enable the service, you set some firewall exceptions, you copy over some documents to serve, and maybe you do a bit of testing. So that's like kind of the model that I'm going to go by over here. So next, yeah, what we'll do is ensure the web server service is enabled and running or started. There we go. And over here, I'll use the systemd module. And, you know, I'll show the documentation for a couple of these modules when I come to a point where I don't really remember one. But yum and systemd are pretty common ones, so I still have it in my head. But, you know, it's a goal to remember all of the common modules so that you don't have to spend time checking the documentation so much. Anyways, so I'll give the name of a service. So that'll be the web underscore package variable. I can just reuse that here. I'll set the state to started, and enabled is a boolean, and we'll set that to true. Okay, looking good. Next, like I was saying earlier, we'll make a firewall exception. So ensure port 80 is open. There we go. And so in here, we'll use the ansible.posix.firewall_d module, and you'll notice I used the fully qualified name over here, and there's no particular reason why other than I'm trying to build a good habit. I don't really use the fully qualified name for the built-in modules, but for these external ones, I feel like it is pretty important to do that. Seems like it makes things more specific, but on the exam, I'm probably going to try and save as much time as possible and get away with using, the shorthand version. Anyways, so like I was saying, I don't exactly remember the syntax for this module. So what I'll do is pull up another terminal tab and run Ansible doc-l to view all of the modules here. And this actually reminds me, let me show you something else pretty cool. Notice how this description gets cut off? Well, that can be kind of annoying when you're trying to search for things. So a workaround I found is to use -jl to put it in JSON format. And what this will do is give you the full description. So now it makes it a little bit easier to search, I would assume. That's just a quick little tip for you. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but it works. Anyways, so we'll grep for firewall D. And there we go. There's two modules that have to do with that, but we want the one that's just about firewall D. So Ansible doc firewall D. And yeah, so this actually reminds me, this immediate thing is super duper important. This is going to make sure that the changes take effect immediately. So we're going to want to keep that in our head. And usually what I like to do when I'm viewing the documentation is to check out the examples first, because they replicate almost what most people would be doing with these modules. Okay, so here we have a service, and then we have a Boolean for permanence, and then state. So we'll replicate that over here in our playbook. So the service will be HTTP, the, what is it called? State and permanent. So state will be enabled, permanent will be true, and immediate will also be true. So remember that immediate thing that I was talking about? That's where it comes into play. Okay, so there we go. We got that firewall module taken care of. What else did we want to do? Well, we wanted to ensure that we have some content for our web server to serve. So we'll say ensure there is content. Sure, that's pretty vague, but whatever. And so I'll use the copy module to copy some content. And I'm going to make this a special string. So it'll say, yo, I am running web_package. That's pretty cool. And after that, I'm just going to say the destination for this will be, what's it called? Web_doc. So that variable that we set in the inventory. Okay, and actually, one more thing that's important here is that I should put in /index.html, because this doc root is just pointing to the path of the directory of the document root, but we still need to specify a file name as well. So there we go. I almost saved myself from a little bit of trouble there. And yeah, we can make another task here that will ensure web server responds with 200 or something like that. And to do this, we'll use the URI module, and URI takes a URL. So like what this URI thing does is it's similar to the curl command, I guess. That's like an analog to it, I guess. And so this URL will just be http:// and then I'll just be lazy here and give the inventory host name right there. And yeah, that should work fine. And then I can say the status code should be 200. I think that's the default that this module expects, but it's always nice to be specific just so that you can change it if you want to later on. Okay, so notice I didn't really use quotes here, and that's perfectly fine. Didn't need to use quotes, but yeah. Okay, so before we write another play that would test the web server from our control node, that's something that I kind of want to do. We'll just test it how it is so far, do a bit of unit testing here. So we'll run an Ansible -playbook --syntax check, and then give my web server.yml. And there we go. Everything looks nice over there. But does it mean that it will run? Will it run? That is the question. So I'll just do this and type in my SSH password. And here's the moment of truth. So provision a web server, ensure the packages are installed. Let's see how that plays out. It'll take a moment, but what we should see is a couple of changes. We should see all changes basically. And yeah, there we go. No errors. I'm very happy about that. So another thing that I'd like to show you is that if you run the playbook again, since we did everything in an idempotent way, using the default Ansible modules and nothing custom with like command or shell, everything is going to be okay since it knows that it didn't need to do anything special the second time around. So that's pretty cool. You'll notice that it says changed equals 0 here. Well, it said changed equals 4 up here. So yeah, just wanted to point that out. So something cool that I'll just show you to confirm that it's working is that we'll go over to the browser and then just go to http://appserver2, almost spelled that wrong. And it says, yo, I'm running Nginx. And that's pretty nice. So appserver4, let's see how it's doing. And it says, yo, I'm running HTTPD over here. Like, yay. Everything works. That's so nice. Similarly, you could also use curl. So I could do a curl-i to get the response headers, and then go for HTTPD appserver2. And there are the response headers. You can see that the server is indeed Nginx. And same thing over here with appserver4. It's an Apache server. So there you go. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's working just fine. And I guess this about ends the video, but I do want to do one small extra thing, and that is to experiment here a little bit by adding another play to this playbook that will test from controller node. So it'll test the server from the controller node. So we'll set hosts to local host. We'll set the tasks to use the URI module. And I'm not giving it a name because I'm being lazy, but we'll give it a URL, and that'll be a, well, this is actually going to tread on a bit of what we'll be doing in the future, which is using loops. But I just want to expose you to this, I guess. It's always nice to give little hints in these videos because there's a lot of content. So yeah, I'll just do that. And oh yeah, so I need a loop, and I'll just give it a list. That's what loops like to use, lists. So that'll just be what? appserver2.labnet and appserver4.labnet. And I guess I should put an http:// over here just to make sure everything's good. And yeah, let's run this again and see how that works. So I'll do a syntax check. Nothing blew up in our face. That's always good. And yeah, we'll run this again. We'll get all OKs for the tasks that run on the web group, but let's see what happens for our controller node. And yeah, so it also returned an OK, and that's because it did exactly what I expected. It got a 200 return code. But yeah, so instead of checking the browser to see if everything worked from your controller node or your workstation or whatever, you can also put that into your Ansible playbook. That's kind of what I wanted to show you. Okay? So yeah, I mean, what we did here was gotten our feet wet with writing playbooks. So now I'm very excited to say that I've built up enough continuity in these videos to now cover more specific topics, like writing plays that would deal with SSH key-based authentication, writing plays that deal with privilege escalation, you know, all of the stuff that it talks about over here, like all of these specific things. So yeah, we just opened the door up to many more specific videos. Hopefully they'll be shorter than this one. And yeah, I hope this video made your day better. And as always, thanks for watching.